Well, I want to welcome Mike Galvin, Executive VP of Granite and a great member of INCOMPAS, serves on our board of directors. It's the treasurer of INCOMPAS. And as we go through a series where we're asking executives as they manage through the crisis related to the pandemic and to COVID, I couldn't think of a better person to talk about Granite and who they serve, what Granite and who they are as a company, and then talk a little bit as to the issues that are currently in front of Congress, where we're working closely with our members like Granite on a number of high priorities. As we manage through this crisis, we maintain something called Keep America Connected, a pledge that Granite and other of our companies have kept, so that the small business, mid-size, and businesses of all size could maintain their broadband connectivity and services, even if they may be faced with tremendous slowdowns and a economic challenge of maintaining service and even keeping open during this time. So, Mike, welcome. Thank you for being here. And in just a little bit, I'll talk a little bit about INCOMPAS and who we are. But first, Mike, introduce yourself and Granite to those who are going to be listening and watching our series today.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Chip. Good to be with you in this way. So for those who don't know, Granite Telecommunications is a competitive local exchange carrier headquartered in Quincy, Massachusetts, just outside of Boston. We've been in existence since 2003 and provide voice and data services to multi-site businesses and governmental agencies. The company has grown steadily over the years. We're just over 2,000 employees, about $1.5 billion in annualized revenue, in service a lot of the companies that you just mentioned. Large companies, mid-sized companies, and small companies throughout the United States and Canada with voice and data services.
Tell our listeners who some of your customers are, and as you mentioned, multi-site locations of all sizes. What comes to my mind, both on the government side, is, let's say it's the post office. You could probably name others, and then we think of Walmart in every town across my home state and across the country. But who are some of your customers?
Well, they run a pretty big range, from many of the largest retail and hospitality companies, almost every one of the big box department stores, retail establishments, most of the companies that do business at major malls and in other retail locations. We have a number of other types of industries where we do very well, including healthcare companies, financial service companies, other public utility companies, and as I mentioned, governmental agencies is something that we are increasingly focusing on and doing more and more of. You mentioned the United States Post Office, which has long been a Granite customer, where we provide services in more than 30,000 locations for the post office across the United States.
So as we talk about who Granite is and then who you serve, let me step back a little bit on a personal level. How's your family? How are all the people working around you? Your CEO, Rob Hale, is a great leader for our industry. Talk a little bit just of the personal relationships and how your family and how everyone is managing during this time.
Yeah, we're hanging tough, as another local resident of Boston, Donnie Wahlberg, might say. The pandemic has hit this area and hit other areas where we do business. We have offices in major cities, including Manhattan, Philadelphia, Miami, and many of our employees have been significantly affected. We feel our customers' pain. We have a number of our staff. Most of the staff is working remotely. I am not. I'm here in our office, in our headquarters. We are deemed an essential business, a communication service company. And so we were exempting for the stay-at-home rules. But everyone's doing okay. My kids are out of school, and we've been looking for things to fill their time. But work-wise, working in the communications industry, I think it's never been more critical to fulfill this role that we have. Us and those in this industry are performing a service and have products that are really critical, and now is demonstrating that very clearly.
Well, yeah. Mike, I couldn't agree more with you. The country has really come to a consensus that broadband is an essential service, and the connectivity that Granite and other companies are providing are essential during this time. As we shift everything online in our educational system, our healthcare system, our business, our work from home. So it really has been a transformational moment, I think, not only for the country, but all of our companies that are serving, whether it's business or residential markets, governmental services, really, everything from public safety, public health, our education. We couldn't emphasize how important a company like Granite is to their community. Not only do you do this during a crisis, but one of the leading charitable companies, a very philanthropic mindset and culture. Now I'm from the Gulf region, and not too long ago you had a well-known leader from our area, New Orleans Saints quarterback Drew Brees. He came up, talk a little bit about what you do in Granite for cancer research and the challenge for all of your employees and for well-known celebrities to come and what do they do and what is the tradition that y'all have adopted, not only in the crisis, but every year to meet the needs of those who are going through cancer treatments? Well,
Rob, Chip, we're down a quarterback here in Massachusetts. One of our more well-known quarterbacks has decided there's greener pastures elsewhere. And so one of the annual events that we have every March is a fundraising where most of us shave our heads. It was started sort of as a company joke 6 or 7 years ago, but it's caught on. 2 years ago, Tom Brady was fortunate enough to come and join us. Governor Baker has done it, I think, every year. We have a number of other celebrities and personalities, some local, but some national as well. And Drew Brees was kind enough to join us this past March, in early March here, and shaved his head along with very many, I think 1,800 of us in total here. The company really, and Rob Hale, our founder and CEO, really is two passions. This company and the growth of this company and the services and the voice and data services that we provide, in his philanthropy. And we're very blessed. And with those blessings, we believe that there's an obligation to give back. And one of the concrete ways that we do that is by substantial donations to Dana-Farber and to many other hospitals around the country that are really on the front lines. And we take great pride in helping to support those efforts, not just with voice and data services, but with financial contributions.
Right.
We donated $8 million this year through that event. It's quite something.
Well, speaking as the CEO of INCOMPAS, we're very proud of what Granite does for its community, for its charity, for the philanthropy that it does year in and year out, and then the response in the pandemic of how you've risen to the occasion during the crisis and really kept your customers, the businesses you serve, connected, up and running. And so it's a great story, the company and what y'all do. So I'm very proud to have you as a member. Let me talk a little bit about INCOMPAS. Our other members, we represent all the leading regional fiber companies like Dish. There are new entrants in the national wireless space. And then we have leading internet and tech companies like Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, Twitter. So our distinctive is we combine the leading network companies, business providers, with the leading internet companies, all centered and focused around promoting competition across all platforms, across all networks. And we really have built a great membership over the last 5-6 years with the help of companies like Granite and their participation on our board. And as we go before members of Congress or the Federal Communications Commission, we bring a good coalition, a great coalition, and we try to solve problems and bring consensus. And that brings us to our current challenge. Legislation before Congress. It's already passed the House in one form. And now we're working very closely with Senator Markey from your home state of Massachusetts. On the Democrat side, Senator Wicker from my home state of Mississippi. How can we help our companies provide and maintain the connectivity and the critical services, whether it's in education, healthcare, or in business, into our homes as everything has shifted to in-home work and in-home learning and telemedicine and telehealth. So talk a little bit about what we've been doing before Congress to try to express the urgency of getting funds to our broadband companies so that we can keep businesses up and running and then accelerate the recovery as we come out of the stay-at-home and the shutdown orders of the last couple months. Talk about the pledge that Granite took of keeping America connected and what's that meant, what that has meant for your companies.
So Chip, as I mentioned, we are one of the largest service providers to multi-site businesses. Many retail, hospitality, hotels, major airlines are all Granite customers for voice and often data services. Those companies have been very hard hit by the pandemic. It's not uncommon for us to have customers that have had no revenue and closed stores for all or virtually all of their businesses. And it really crosses a bunch of the different industries. It isn't just retailers or hotels or restaurants. Oftentimes it's the companies that support those companies directly and sometimes even indirect support. Granite has a number of national and regional philanthropic companies, nonprofit companies, companies whose workforce hasn't been able to work on site, and frankly, whose donations have been materially affected by the pandemic. We also have very many small businesses. We provide services at 300 or so of the largest retail operations, malls, large malls, mid-sized malls, even some strip malls in the United States. And very many of those times, there are small businesses next door to the large ones. The national brands are the ones that come to mind. But there's often either through franchise agreements or just for local shops, individually owned small family-run businesses that have been very substantially affected by the pandemic. They haven't had revenue. They've not been able to fully pay or in times pay at all any portion of their invoice. It's had a significant effect on those types of businesses. They've come to us asking for additional terms for payment, reduction in costs, in other forms of relief. And while we were one of the first companies to sign on to the pledge, we knew it was frankly the right thing to do and something we were gearing towards before being asked by the FCC. But when we were asked by the FCC, both in March and more recently in May to extend, which we did through the end of June, we knew it was the right thing to do. We knew that those businesses needed those services. Oftentimes, for a small retailer, it's an alarm line or some other HVAC or other critical application for which they need to remain operational on the day or at the time, close to the time that they can resume operations. Some have asked us, why can't you just suspend the service? Or why don't you just discontinue the service for a period of time, like some other products or services maybe can be done. But for these products and services, there's often telephone numbers that are associated with them that go away if you don't continue to pay for those. That affects call hunting sequences, automatic dials for fire or Berg or other types of alarm panels. Those things cannot be preserved if they don't continue to be paid for with underlying carriers. And to get those services up and active again, oftentimes takes a substantial amount of time involving on-site technical work that is done and scheduled now, oftentimes 60, 90, 120 days out. And so shutting off those services to a small or mid-sized business often would mean that that business can't open for 60 days or 90 days or 120 days. We knew that would be hugely problematic for that business in an effort to get going, to resume the services. Frankly, it's our last option and the least, the thing that we like to do the least, in part because of the effect on the broader community, the employees of that company, and frankly, that company's ability to get up and resume services as quickly as they want to and the community wants them to be doing that.
As we were talking, the connectivity and the ability to recover the costs that have been lost during this time, and as our companies and Granite has kept their pledge, kept America connected, kept businesses up and running, and by so doing will help us speed and accelerate the recovery, we hope. So we've been working on a bipartisan basis to try to have a fund that would reimburse carriers of all sizes, both in the residential market and the business market. We're very grateful that Senator Markey has said good things in congressional hearings. Senator Wicker and his staff have been very receptive, and we've been working closely with the staff at the FCC and Chairman Pai's office. And we believe that we're reaching a consensus that would allow us to create this fund that would be part of the next COVID legislation that we believe will pass sometime in July, at least through the Senate, hopefully reconcile the House and the Senate together. And as we work together, our companies have been calling in, writing letters to key members of Congress, Senator Wicker, Senator Shelby, Senator Markey. And without a company like Granite and without the great staff and team that we have at INCOMPAS and all the other members that we've been representing, I don't think that we'd be in a position that we are today to hopefully see good legislation that will help the companies that have kept America connected, funded, and that they'll be made somewhat whole. We don't expect them to be made completely whole, and a lot of our companies we're willing to take those losses to do the right thing. But we do need some help so that we can continue and maintain the connectivity that's so critical today. And so I wanted to talk about that issue. And also, y'all have been critical in helping schools and students stay online. Talk a little bit about that, because one of the provisions of the next round of legislation is to expand and give greater flexibility and creativity to what we are able to receive as our companies who are providing educational services or providing the connectivity to schools and libraries and students during this time.
Yeah, sure. So two things, Chip, really. And the first really, in my view, really emphasizes the value that a company like Granite derives from this relationship with INCOMPAS at times like this, but in normal times as well, where we're headquartered in Massachusetts. We have some ability, and we do have a DC office outside of DC in Tyson that does our federal contracting. But we derive great value from you and your staff in hearing about what's going on a day-to-day, sometimes hour-to-hour basis on concrete proposals like this one, which very squarely and very directly affect a business like us, where we're able to provide a lifeline to our customers, in part because of the backing and support, the knowledge about what's going on Capitol Hill, and helping those that are involved in policymaking and involved in shaping that legislation to understand really what it's going on within the business marketplace, within governmental services, in the steps that we're taking. And really, it's a really important and really valuable connection that we have, and we're so appreciative to have this. With respect to schools and libraries, Granite has a long-standing business practice there. I think we're an approved vendor in about 20 different states where we sell directly to very many school systems, very many libraries, very many educational sources, some of whom have been disbanded. One of the neat things that we get to do is develop solutions for times like this. And one of the things that has been among our highest selling in that segment for rural school districts, we and one of our service partners came up with a proposal to add Wi-Fi to school buses. Originally, it was conceived to give students that had substantial amounts of times on school buses connectivity when they were outside of cellular service. It was thought that they were going to be doing homework, I hope, on the school bus and using that connectivity for learning purposes. The reality has been in the past several months that those school buses have been sent out to rural areas to provide connectivity to allow students that are struggling with homework gap. And we've been selling that product very substantially, and other hotspots for schools and libraries to try to expand broadband services in remote and in hard to reach rural areas. It's really been a great solution and something that we think has made a very substantial difference.
Well, Granite represents a lot of our companies who have done the same thing during the crisis to find an innovative way, an innovative solution. That's one of the best I've heard on the school buses.
Yeah.
And as we tell your story and what you're doing, it does make a difference. And as we tell the stories of our other companies, and as we look forward into the future, we're looking at major legislative actions and FCC actions that will try to provide connectivity to all Americans everywhere over the next 3 to 5 years. And we think that we'll see upwards to $160 billion in different funding initiatives in E-rate, telemedicine, telehealth, broadband deployment, 5G, making sure that we win the race to advance networks internationally as well as serve all Americans at home. And so being able to tell your story and our other member companies in times of crisis, in a pandemic, and keeping America connected during this time, and then laying the foundation for the future. How do we win the future? And I'm excited that we are going to see this new national consensus carry over post-crisis into the end of this Congress, into the next Congress, around a national consensus on how important broadband is and the broadband services that you provide for very critical institutions like schools and libraries, very important economic recovery for our businesses. And so again, I couldn't be more proud to represent through Encompass companies like Granite. You had mentioned something that your office in Washington handles your government contracts and procurement. And one thing that we've been advocating for is more competition in contracts because it lowers the cost for taxpayers. It gives government agencies better service, more innovation, and the best technology. Talk a little bit about what Granite is doing in the current EIS and what that means and what it is and how much does it represent, and any successes Granite has had in competing for contracts.
Yeah, thanks. So EIS is a government sponsored buying contract through GSA. It represents next generation voice and data services for federal agencies, and other states can purchase off of it as well. But it was a follow-on contract to the networks and a handful of other purchasing contracts that GSA had administered. This time around, and through this government contracting opportunity, it was intended to operate more like the private sector, where underlying agencies, customers of GSA, had more competitive options. There are 9 companies that have been approved to sell services to federal agencies through the EIS contract. Granite is one of those 9. The contract, like a lot of federal contracts, didn't stay on schedule. It's been delayed, but it is rolling and awards are being made. Granite has been fortunate enough to be a winner of 7 EIS awards thus far. There's more than a couple hundred to go. There's a small percentage of the roughly $50 billion in revenue that's been awarded. One of the values that GSA came forward with in this purchasing contract is to promote competitive options. And because of that, Granite and companies like us are looking for partners, service partners, to provide innovative, competitive options to federal agencies. And so we've been reaching out. We probably have a couple of dozen of new connections with service providers, different equipment manufacturers, different local fiber, local regional network service providers that we've struck deals with so that we can package up innovative products and services and sell those as competitive offerings to federal agencies. Federal agencies are buying more so on a national or at least across the federal agency spectrum, and rather than having a single or a regional approach, which would often align with underlying ILEC footprints. Because of all of those factors, we think there's a unique opportunity for competitive options. We've been championing that with INCOMPAS's help on Capitol Hill and elsewhere. And we would invite INCOMPAS members and others to help join us in that so that the public sector, large federal agencies, purchase far more like private entities do with competitive options. It's really a great theory, and we hope and expect it to be very successful for federal agencies.
Well, I want to congratulate you for the 7 wins, and I know y'all been working hard over the last really 3 years, maybe even longer, to be able to certify, to be eligible to win one of 9. It's a great honor to the company, a great tribute. And it is a great opportunity for our other member companies to partner with you as y'all compete for these nationwide contracts. I wanted everybody to hear it's $50 billion of contracts, tremendous opportunities. It's a great way for our companies to be able to partner and grow with you. And so we're very proud that y'all won the selection to be one of 9 and that you've begun to have success in competing and have won 7 awards. So as we think through current crisis, the responsibilities to keep America connected, the opportunities to have legislation to help you do so, to lay a foundation for future policy for broadband deployment everywhere, and then for government contracts to bring better competition and services to governmental and public agencies. You are doing great work. I'm very proud to have you as a member, and I really appreciate that you have spent so much time this afternoon kind of talking through the way that we partner and the way that INCOMPAS can represent and advocate for Granite and other companies as we go out and tell our story in a long, rich history of promoting competition everywhere across the telecommunications and technology sectors. So thank you, Mike.
We've been a long time INCOMPAS ComTel member. We view it to be really valuable. It isn't just in this pandemic with this individual piece of legislation, but there's really been a series of legislative initiatives in advocacy at the FCC and now with state personnel that INCOMPAS has helped us with. We derive real value from those relationships and think that others who are in the competitive space can do so. But there's a number of other proposals as well that we're working with and through INCOMPAS on. It's really been a very valuable relationship for us and one that we continue.
Well, Mike, thank you again and for your time, and we look forward to working and continuing to go forward together and to hopefully make some good things happen. So out of this crisis and into a better future, hope for the country and the companies we represent and that you serve. So thank you, Mike, very much.
Thank you, Chip. Thanks.